Every lock has a key. Every door that has ever opened in a person's life. A career that took off. A relationship that transformed them. A business that grew from nothing. A version of themselves they barely recognized in the mirror. Every single one of those doors was opened by the same thing. Not strategy. Not luck. Not timing. Not talent. The key. The inner key. The one thing that determines whether every other thing you try, every goal, every plan, every skill you learn, every book you read actually works or quietly fails. Here's what I know about you. You've tried things, you've read things, you've started things, and some of them worked for a while, and then they didn't, or they never worked at all, or they worked for someone else and not for you. And somewhere deep down, there's a question you don't say out loud. What is wrong with me? Nothing. Nothing is wrong with you. You just haven't found the key yet. Today, over the next 4 chapters, we're going to go through the 7 inner principles that form what I call the inner master key. Not habits, not hacks, not morning routines. The actual foundational psychological architecture that every person who builds a truly remarkable life, regardless of where they started, has quietly installed inside themselves. By the end of this, you won't just know the key, you'll understand how to use it. Let's begin. Let me describe a pattern. Maybe you'll recognize it. You find something, a book, a video, a course, an idea, that genuinely excites you, that genuinely feels like the answer. You feel the energy, the clarity, the sense that this time is different. You start strong, maybe for a week, maybe for a month. And then, slowly, quietly, you drift. Not dramatically. You don't throw in the towel dramatically. You just slow down, miss a day, then 2, then you're back to where you were. And you tell yourself it was the wrong method, or the wrong time, or the wrong circumstances. So you search again for the next thing, and the cycle repeats. Here's the hard truth that nobody says directly. The methods weren't wrong. You weren't wrong. The foundation was wrong. Imagine trying to build a house with excellent bricks, excellent timber, excellent craft on a cracked foundation. Every wall you raise will eventually shift. Every structure you build will eventually show the fractures underneath. That's not a materials problem, that's a foundation problem. The inner master key is about the foundation. Fix the foundation, and the same methods that failed you before will start working. Because they always worked. They just had nowhere stable to stand. 4 chapters, 7 principles. Chapter 1 covers the 2 principles of self-perception. How you see yourself determines the ceiling of everything you build, and how to raise it. Chapter 2 covers the 2 principles of mental energy. Where your attention goes, your life follows, and most people are leaking theirs constantly. Chapter 3 covers the principle of resistance, the one force that appears in every person's life at the exact moment of real growth, and what it costs you to mistake it for a stop sign. Chapter 4 covers the final 2 principles about time, legacy, and the version of yourself you're in the process of becoming. 7 principles. 1 key. Let's unlock Chapter 1. Before you can change your results, you have to change the story you carry about who you are, because your behavior is always consistent with your deepest held beliefs about yourself. Most people approach personal change completely backwards. They try to change what they do, the actions, the habits, the output, while leaving untouched the identity that produces that behavior. This is like trying to change the fruit of a tree while leaving the roots exactly as they are. You can pull at the fruit all day long. The roots don't move, and the same fruit grows back. Here's how identity works, practically. If you believe at your core that you are not the kind of person who handles money well, you will unconsciously make decisions that confirm that belief. You won't do it deliberately. You won't even be aware of it most of the time. But every decision runs through the filter of identity first, and identity produces behavior consistent with itself. This means that if you want a different outcome, more wealth, better relationships, greater health, a bigger life, the first and most urgent project is not new habits. It's a new story, a different answer to the question, who am I? Not who you wish you were, not who you're trying to become, who you have decided you already are. This isn't a delusion. This is the direction. The brain treats identity as reality and works to confirm it. Change the identity and the brain goes to work, confirming the new one. Every decision, every small behavior, every moment of choosing between two paths, all of it gets filtered through the story you carry. The people who make dramatic changes in their lives are almost never the ones who tried hardest to change their actions. They're the ones who changed their story first, and the actions followed. I grew up in a household where money was tight and worry was constant. By the time she was in her late 20s, those early years had calcified into a belief she'd never examined directly. I'm not someone who gets ahead financially. That's just not my story. She made decent money. She just never seemed to keep it. Not because she was irresponsible, because she was performing her identity perfectly and consistently without realizing it. On an ordinary Thursday evening, she was listening to a conversation between two people she respected. One of them said something that stopped her cold. The money will follow, but only if you decide not plan, not hope, but actually decide that you are someone who builds. I wrote one line in her journal that night. I am someone who builds. 3 words. Present tense. Identity, not aspiration. She started reading about it that night. She started talking about money differently. She made different decisions, not because she had a new system, but because she was operating from a different story. 2 years later, her financial position had changed more in those 24 months than in the previous 8 years. The circumstances hadn't changed. The income had barely changed. The identity had changed, and everything else followed it. Research in behavioral psychology consistently shows that identity-based behavior change, changing who you believe you are before changing what you do, produces significantly more durable results than outcome-based approaches. People who describe themselves as a saver save more than people who describe saving as something I'm trying to do, even when their financial circumstances are identical. The label precedes the behavior. The story precedes the result. Do this today. Write down 3 beliefs about yourself that are limiting your financial or personal growth. Don't edit them. Just surface them honestly. Awareness is the first act of change. This week, for each limiting belief, write a replacement identity statement. Not I want to be someone who invests, but I am someone who invests. Present tense, non-negotiable. This month, every morning, before any decision-making, read your identity statements. Let them filter everything. Notice what shifts in your choices when you operate from the new story. You are always performing your identity. Change the performance at the surface, and it lasts days. Change the identity at the root, and the performance changes permanently. Start with the story. Everything else builds on it. But identity is only the first layer, because there's a second dimension of self-perception that quietly determines your ceiling, and most people can feel it, but have never been able to name it. The level at which you perform, earn, and live is not determined by your capacity. It is determined by your self-image, the picture you carry of yourself at your most fundamental level. Here's something that will sound strange until it lands. Most people, at some point in their lives, have had a period of unusual success, a stretch of time where things clicked, where they were performing at a level that surprised even themselves, where the results were genuinely exceptional, and then, quietly, they drifted back. Not all the way back, but back toward their baseline. This is not a coincidence. It is the self-image doing its primary job, maintaining homeostasis. The self-image is a thermostat. Set at 68 degrees, a thermostat will warm a cold room and cool a hot one, always returning to 68. The self-image works identically. When your results drop significantly below your internal self-image, something activates inside you: drive, urgency, the energy to close the gap. But when your results rise significantly above your self-image, above what you unconsciously believe you deserve, what feels like you, the thermostat activates in the other direction. Sabotage. Not conscious, deliberate sabotage. Behavioral patterns that quietly pull the results back down to the set point. This is why people who win large amounts of money suddenly often lose it within a few years. The money exceeded the self-image set point. The thermostat was corrected. This is why people consistently earn the same income despite changing jobs, companies, and industries. The earnings hover near the set point because the person unconsciously positions themselves to match it. This is why some people are chronically late despite desperately wanting to be on time. Their self-image includes, "I'm not the kind of person who has it together," and the thermostat ensures the behavior matches. The extraordinary news is that thermostats can be reset. Not easily, not overnight, but deliberately, systematically, over time. And when the self-image expands, when the thermostat is set higher, the behavior follows automatically, because the system is now correcting toward a new set point. You don't have to force the behavior. You have to raise the set point. Kofi was a genuinely talented salesperson. Every quarter, he'd start strong, build momentum, hit impressive numbers in the first 6 weeks. And then, reliably, something would happen: a bad week, a lost deal, a slump, and he'd end the quarter near his previous average. His manager noticed and asked him once, "What do you think your quarter is worth?" "Your honest gut number." Without thinking, Kofi said the same number he'd been hitting for 3 years. "That's your problem," his manager said simply. Kofi didn't understand until he started deliberately working on his self-image, reading about it, journaling, exposing himself to environments where his current results felt small rather than acceptable. Slowly, the internal set point shifted. He stopped expecting to plateau. He stopped finding reasons to plateau. He started expecting at a gut level, not just a goal level, to exceed. The quarter after he began this work, 40% above his previous average, not because he learned new sales techniques, because the thermostat moved. Today, identify your current set point, not your goals, but what you genuinely, honestly expect, in income, in relationships, in health. Write those numbers and honest expectations down. That's your current thermostat setting. This week, deliberately put yourself in one environment that is above your current set point. A conversation, a room, a book, a community where your current results feel like a starting point, not an achievement. This month, begin a daily 5-minute visualization practice. Not fantasy. A clear, detailed, emotionally engaged picture of you performing at your next level. The self-image responds to vivid, repeated mental rehearsal the same way it responds to actual experience. The ceiling isn't in your industry. It isn't in the economy. It isn't in your circumstances. It is in the picture you carry of yourself, and that picture is a choice. Raise the thermostat. The behavior adjusts to meet it. You now understand identity and self-image, the first layer of the inner master key. But there's a force that acts on top of both of them that can undermine even the strongest identity and even the most elevated self-image. It's where you spend your most valuable resource. Not money, not time. Something rarer than both. Chapter 2. Attention is the most valuable resource in your life, and almost every force in the modern world is designed to take it from you permanently, invisibly, and profitably. We talk constantly about managing time, but time is not actually your scarcest resource. You have the same amount of time as the most productive, most successful, most accomplished person you can name. What you don't necessarily have the same of is focused attention. And focused attention is the actual unit of creation. Everything ever made by a human being, every business, every book, every work of art, every scientific discovery, every loving relationship was built with focused attention applied consistently over time. Nothing else. And here's the crisis of the modern moment. Focused attention has become almost impossible to sustain. Not because people have gotten weaker or lazier, because we have engineered environments, devices, platforms, notifications, media that are specifically, deliberately, expensively optimized to fragment attention. Every app on your phone was designed by some of the most brilliant engineers and psychologists in the world, with one specific goal: to claim as much of your attention as possible, for as long as possible, as often as possible. They are remarkably good at it. And the cost, not the distraction cost, the life cost, is almost never calculated. Here is a rough calculation. The average person spends somewhere between 3 and 5 hours per day on passive digital consumption, social media, streaming, random browsing. Take the conservative number, 3 hours a day. That's 21 hours a week. Over a year, that's 1,092 hours. Over a decade, 10,920 hours. 10,000 hours is, famously, roughly the threshold of mastery in any complex skill. The average person is spending a decade of mastery-level hours watching content designed to sell them things and keep them emotionally activated. Those hours are not neutral. They are not rest. They are hours that could have been applied to building a skill, a business, a body of knowledge, a creative work, a financial system, a meaningful relationship. The people who build extraordinary lives are not smarter. They are more deliberate about where their attention lands, and they treat attention with the same seriousness that wealthy people treat capital. You don't let capital sit in places that destroy it. You don't let attention sit there either. Zainab was a 31-year-old graphic designer who genuinely believed she didn't have time to build the freelance practice she wanted. "I work full-time," she said. "By the evening I'm exhausted. There's no time." A mentor suggested an experiment. For 1 week, she would track her actual time in 30-minute blocks. Not what she intended to do with her time, what she actually did with it. At the end of the week, she was quiet for a long time. She had spent 4.5 hours building her portfolio. She had spent 19 hours on her phone, social media, streaming, browsing. Not 19 hours of intentional rest. 19 hours of fragmented, passive, low-value consumption. "I thought I was tired," she said later. "I wasn't tired. I was drained by the wrong things, and then I had nothing left for the right ones." She made one change. The first 90 minutes after she got home from work became untouchable. No phone, no TV, only work on her own practice. Within 4 months, she had enough freelance income to take on 1 fewer shift per week at her full-time job. She didn't find more time. She reclaimed the time she was already spending. 90 minutes of focused deep work per day equals 547 hours per year. 547 hours applied to a single skill over 5 years, 2,735 hours. That is more than sufficient to move from beginner to genuinely competent, potentially expert in almost any field. Language acquisition, a musical instrument, a technical skill, a creative practice, a business built from scratch, all of it accessible within the attention that currently goes elsewhere. The question is never whether you have enough time. The question is always where your attention is living. Today, conduct your own time audit. For just 1 day, record every 30-minute block honestly, not what you planned, what actually happened. The result will be clarifying. This week, identify your single largest attention drain, not to eliminate it entirely, to contain it. Set specific times when it's allowed. Outside those times, it doesn't exist. This month, create a protected daily block, even 60 minutes, that is exclusively for building a skill, a business, a body of work, a financial plan. Treat it like a meeting you cannot cancel. You are always building something with your attention. The only question is whether you chose what's being built. Reclaim the attention, direct it, protect it, because a life built with deliberate attention looks completely different from a life built by default. Protecting attention is one half of the mental energy equation. The other half is something nobody talks about. It's the internal conversation you've been having with yourself for your entire life, and whether that conversation is building you or quietly dismantling you. Every person alive is running a constant internal commentary. Thoughts about themselves, interpretations of events, predictions about the future, verdicts on their own worth and capability. This commentary runs continuously, tens of thousands of thoughts per day, almost entirely below the level of conscious awareness. And here's what makes it so powerful. The brain treats your internal dialogue as information. Not as mere feelings, not as passing weather, as data, as reports from a reliable observer about the nature of reality. If your internal dialogue consistently says, "This is too hard for someone like me," the brain accepts that as a factual report and adjusts behavior accordingly. If it says, "Every time I try something new, it falls apart," the brain catalogues that as pattern recognition and uses it to predict future outcomes. If it says, "I'm the kind of person who always finds a way," the brain uses that as its operating assumption and searches actively for ways. The internal dialogue shapes expectation. Expectation shapes perception, what you notice, what you filter out, what opportunities you see or miss. Perception shapes behavior. Behavior shapes outcome, and the outcome, in turn, appears to confirm the original dialogue. This is the loop that determines whether a person's life trends upward or downward over time, and almost nobody ever examines the loop directly. Most people manage it accidentally, absorbing the dialogue from their environment, their history, their early experiences, and never asking, "Is this actually true? Is this serving me? Did I choose this?" The inner dialogue can be audited. It can be examined. It can be deliberately redirected, not to toxic positivity, not to hollow affirmations pasted on mirrors, to honest, evidence-based, growth-oriented, internal conversations that actually reflect the capacity you have and the direction you're moving. That shift alone in the quality and direction of the internal broadcast changes lives, not because it's magic, because it changes what the brain takes as its operating instructions. Jerome was 38, operated a small landscaping business, good at the work, trusted by clients. But every time he thought about growing, hiring, expanding, bidding for larger contracts, a sentence appeared in his mind like a reflex. "Don't get above yourself." He didn't know where it came from. A parent, maybe. A teacher. An early experience of embarrassment after aiming for something and missing. But that sentence had been running quietly for decades. Every time a big opportunity appeared, Jerome found a reason it wasn't quite right, too soon, too risky, not the right time. In a quiet moment, he finally heard the sentence clearly. He wrote it down, looked at it. "Don't get above yourself." He sat with it for a long time. Then he wrote underneath it, "Says who? On what evidence? To whose benefit?" He couldn't answer any of those questions in a way that satisfied him. The sentence had no defensible basis. It was just old and familiar, and it had been treated as truth for so long that it had the authority of truth. Jerome started replacing it, deliberately, every time it surfaced with, "I'm exactly the kind of person who can handle bigger." He didn't believe it immediately. It felt awkward at first, but he kept replacing the sentence every time the old one appeared. Within 18 months, he had hired 2 people, secured 3 commercial contracts, and doubled his revenue. The market hadn't changed. His skills hadn't dramatically changed. The broadcast changed, and the business followed. Today, for 1 hour, simply observe your internal dialogue without judgment. What does it say when something goes wrong? What does it predict about your future? What does it say about your worth when you compare yourself to others? Just listen. This week, identify your top 3 recurring negative self-talk patterns. Write them out. For each one, write a factual, evidence-based counter-statement, not a positive affirmation, a true alternative interpretation. This month, begin a brief daily practice of intentional self-dialogue. Before beginning important work, spend 2 minutes telling yourself out loud or in writing specifically what you are capable of today. Let the broadcast be deliberate. The voice in your head is not just commentary. It is instruction. Your life is always following its lead. Choose what it says. Audit it, challenge it, redirect it, because the broadcast you run internally is the blueprint your life is built from. 2 principles of perception, 2 principles of mental energy. You now have 4 layers of the inner master key, but there's one thing that will appear, guaranteed, the moment you begin using them, and most people mistake it for evidence that the key doesn't work. It isn't. It's actually evidence that it does. Chapter 3. Every meaningful thing you will ever build in your life will be preceded, accompanied, and periodically revisited by resistance, the internal and external force that pushes back against growth. Learning to read resistance correctly is one of the most transformative skills available to a human being. Here's the pattern. You set a real intention, something meaningful, something that would genuinely change your life. And within hours, sometimes within minutes, something happens. A doubt appears, a seemingly logical reason why now isn't the right time, a wave of fatigue that wasn't there before, a distraction that somehow feels urgent. An old habit reasserts itself with unusual force. This is resistance, and almost everyone reads it wrong. They interpret it as a signal. This doubt must mean I'm not ready. This difficulty must mean this isn't the right path. This discomfort must mean I'm not the right person for this. So they stop, they reconsider, they wait for the signal to change before trying again. And the signal never changes. Because the signal isn't information about the goal. The signal is information about growth itself. Resistance by its nature is most powerful at the exact threshold of change. Think of it this way. A door that has never been opened has the most friction at the very beginning of movement. The hinges protest, the frame resists. Push past that initial friction and the door swings freely. Stop because of the friction and the door never opens. Resistance is always highest at the beginning of something real, at the return after a long absence, and at the moment of breakthrough. Those 3 moments feel the most like failure. They are the moments closest to success. The person who understands this reads resistance differently. The fact that this is hard means I am doing the right thing. The fact that I want to quit right now means I am at the threshold. The fact that this feels impossible is the feeling of growth, not the feeling of being wrong. That reframe is not wishful thinking. It is an accurate description of how human development actually works. Comfort is the absence of growth. Discomfort is the presence of it. Resistance is the gate, not the wall. Adese had been working on her first digital course for 4 months. It was a course on financial literacy for first-generation professionals, something she wished had existed when she was starting out. Month 1, excitement. Month 2, progress. Month 3, everything stalled. The recording wasn't good enough. The structure felt wrong. She'd watched a competitor launch something similar and felt immediately inferior. One night, a Wednesday, just after 11, she closed her laptop with the intention of not reopening the project. It's not ready. I'm not ready. Maybe this isn't really for me. She went to bed with the resignation of a decision made, but at 2 in the morning she was still awake, and something was turning quietly in her mind. She picked up a book she'd been reading and opened to a page she'd marked weeks earlier. It said something she'd underlined, The night before the breakthrough always feels like the last night of a failure. She lay there for a long time. In the morning, she reopened the laptop. She finished the course 6 weeks later.
It launched to 34 students, not thousands. 34.
But the reviews were extraordinary. Students sent her messages about how it had changed their relationship with money. She ran it again, then again. By the end of the year, over 400 students. The night she almost quit was 3 days before she finished the hardest section. Resistance had peaked because she was 3 days from breaking through. She almost read it as a reason to stop. It was actually a reason to continue. Today, think of one thing you have abandoned in the past, that you quit specifically because it became too hard or too slow. Honestly assess, were you at the wall or were you at the gate? Could you have been 3 steps from through? This week, identify the area of your life currently experiencing the most resistance. Don't avoid it. Lean into it. Spend 20 minutes doing the exact thing you've been avoiding. Just 20 minutes. The resistance always diminishes once motion begins. This month, create a resistance journal. Every time you feel like quitting or backing away from something meaningful, write it down. Then write, this resistance means blank. Practice reframing the signal correctly until the reframe becomes automatic. Resistance is not a stop sign. It is a threshold sign. The most important things you will ever build will require you to pass through it. Recognize it, name it, walk through it anyway. The other side is where the real work begins. 5 principles. You understand identity, self-image, attention, internal dialogue, and resistance. These are the core of the inner master key. But there are 2 final principles, and they are different from the others. Because they're not about who you're becoming, they're about who you're becoming for. Chapter 4. Extraordinary lives are not the result of extraordinary moments. They are the accumulated product of ordinary days, lived with unusual intentionality. There is a seductive lie at the heart of most ambition. The lie sounds like this. When things change, when I have more, when I'm ready, when the right opportunity arrives, that's when my real life begins. So people wait. They live in future tense. Their best efforts, their real effort, is always positioned just ahead of where they are right now. And the ordinary days, the Tuesdays, the unremarkable Thursdays, the routine mornings, are treated as the waiting room before the real thing starts. But the ordinary days are the real thing. Every extraordinary person you have ever admired was built on ordinary days. The author wrote their great book in early mornings before the rest of the house was awake. The entrepreneur built their company in evenings and weekends, while everyone around them was resting. The investor built their wealth in the silent accumulation of regular, unexciting contributions made on forgettable days. None of it was glamorous. None of it made good content for social media. All of it made a life. The principle is almost uncomfortable in its simplicity. Who you are on an average day, what you choose, what you build, what you protect, what you practice, is who you will be in 10 years. Not who you are on your best day, not who you are when motivation is high and conditions are perfect. Who you are on a typical day. The person reading an extra chapter on a tired evening. The person choosing to invest before spending on a month when money feels tight. The person who does the work for 20 minutes when they only feel like doing it for 0. That person, the ordinary day person, is the one actually building the future. The highlight reel person is just the public announcement of what the ordinary day person already built in private. Babachida and his twin brother Saun are 40 years old this year. They grew up identically. Same house, same school, same starting conditions. At 22, they both had big ambitions. They talked for hours about the businesses they'd build, the financial independence they'd create, the version of themselves they were moving toward. At 30, both were still talking about it, still planning, still waiting for the right moment. But around 31, Babajide made a small, quiet shift. He stopped waiting for big moments and started doing small, consistent things on ordinary days. He spent 45 minutes every morning before work reading and learning about the field he wanted to enter. He invested a fixed amount every month, not when it was convenient, but automatically, always. He worked on his side project 3 evenings a week, not every evening, not with dramatic intensity, just 3. No fanfare, no announcements, just the ordinary days, used slightly differently. At 40, Babajide has a business-generating side income, a meaningful investment portfolio, and a level of practical expertise in his field that has opened doors he couldn't have predicted at 31. Silence is still preparing to start, still waiting for the perfect moment, still living in future tense. The gap between them wasn't built in a single dramatic event. It was built on the difference between what they each did on the average Tuesday. Over 9 years of Tuesdays. Today, describe your average Tuesday. Honest, specific, detailed. What does a typical, unexceptional day in your life currently look like? That description is the blueprint of your next 10 years. This week, identify one 45-minute block in your average day that could be redirected from low-value activity to building. Just one block, just 45 minutes. This month, design your ideal ordinary day, not your perfect motivational peak day, but the version of an average day that consistently builds toward the life you want. Make it realistic, make it sustainable, then live it for 30 days straight. Your future is not built on the days when everything lines up. It's built on the days when it doesn't, and you show up anyway. The ordinary day is the real unit of a life. Use it like it counts, because it does. 6 principles. 1 remains. And this last one is the one that ties everything together, because without it, all the identity work, all the attention management, all the resistance pushing, all the ordinary day discipline, it can still feel hollow, not because it isn't working, but because you haven't yet fully answered the question underneath all of it. What is this for? The deepest source of sustained motivation, resilience, and growth is not personal ambition. It is the recognition that who you become has consequences far beyond yourself. Let's be completely honest. Pure personal ambition, the desire to have more, earn more, achieve more, be more, is a powerful motivator. But it is not a stable one, because it is always subject to the question, is it worth it? And on the hard days, the days of real resistance, real sacrifice, real uncertainty, the honest answer is often, I'm not sure. For yourself alone, there are days when the trade-offs of growth seem genuinely too high, when resting seems more rational than pushing, when settling seems more honest than striving. This is why most personal ambition eventually runs out, not because people are weak, because ambition pointed only at the self has a ceiling, the self's own comfort level. The most enduring motivation is not ambition, it's purpose. Specifically, the awareness that who you become will directly shape the quality of other people's lives. The parent who does the internal work, who rebuilds their relationship with fear, money, self-worth, does not just improve their own life. They change the inheritance their children receive. Not a financial inheritance, a psychological one, a different model, a different story to inherit. The professional who builds genuine expertise and uses it to mentor those coming behind them creates a ripple that extends far beyond anything they can track. The person who becomes financially stable and uses that stability to give with genuine freedom to causes, to family, to community, generates impact that compound returns can barely describe. This is not about altruism as an obligation. It is about understanding that the fullest version of you, the most capable, most wise, most free version, is one of the most valuable things that could be given to the world around you. And that understanding, the understanding that your growth matters to people beyond yourself, is what makes the ordinary Tuesdays non-negotiable. Not because you have to show up, because they're counting on you to. Nady was 35 when her father passed. He had been a quiet man, not wealthy by any measure, a postal worker for 34 years. At his funeral, person after person stood up to speak, and what they said was not about money or accomplishment. They talked about the way he showed up, his consistency, his patience, the afternoon he spent teaching a neighbor's son to repair a bicycle engine, the years he spent mentoring young men at his church who had no father at home, the way his family never doubted, not for a single day of their lives, that they were supported. Nady stood at the back of that room and understood something she had been circling for years but never fully grasped. Her father's life was not measured in what he accumulated. It was measured in what he radiated. The quality of who he was, his reliability, his groundedness, his patience, his dignity, had touched dozens of lives in ways he would never have fully known. She drove home that evening with a question she couldn't shake. If the quality of who I become is the real legacy, what am I doing to actually become that person? It changed the direction of everything she did after that day. Not because she wanted to be impressive, because she understood, finally, that who she was becoming was not just her business. Today, write down 3 people, specific people in your life, whose lives are being directly shaped by who you are becoming. Think about what it actually means for them if you reach your potential. Let that reality land. This week, identify one area where you've been settling, not because you've fully tried and genuinely hit your ceiling, but because the effort felt too costly when you were only doing it for yourself. Revisit that area with the awareness that others are downstream of your growth. This month, define your legacy statement, not a financial goal, not a career target, but a human goal. By the time I am blank, I want the people around me to describe me as blank. Let that statement guide the ordinary days. You are not just building a life. You are building a model, a demonstration of what is possible, a gift to the people downstream of your growth. Become that person with the full seriousness that gift deserves. 7 principles. The inner master key. Let's hold them all at once, one final time. Principle 1. You are always performing the identity you believe is real. Change the story before you try to change the behavior. Identity first. Everything else follows. Principle 2. Your self-image is the thermostat of your achievement. It can be reset, deliberately, systematically, one elevated environment, one expanded expectation, one repeated mental rehearsal at a time. Principle 3. Where your attention lives, your life is being built. You are building something with your hours every day. The only question is whether you chose what's being built. Principle 4. Your internal dialogue is a broadcast your life is always tuned to. Audit the broadcast, challenge it, redirect it. Let the internal voice become an accurate guide toward what you're capable of, not an echo of what others once said about you. Principle 5. Resistance is the gate, not the wall. The hardest moment of any meaningful effort is almost always the moment closest to breaking through. Don't read the difficulty as a verdict. Read it as a direction. Principle 6. The person you'll be in 10 years is being built on an average Tuesday. The extraordinary future is assembled from ordinary days. Use them deliberately. Use them consistently. Use them like the most important material you have, because they are. Principle 7. The fullest version of you is not built for you alone. Who you become has consequences. People are downstream of your growth. Live accordingly. 7 principles. 1 key. And here's the truth that sits beneath all of them. The inner master key was never missing. It has always been in your possession. It's in the choices you make on unremarkable days. It's in the voice you choose to run in your head. It's in the identity you decide right now, today is real. It's in the resistance you push through instead of turning back from. It's in the vision you carry of the person you are becoming. You've always had the key. Now you know how to use it. 1 action, that's all. Not all 7. 1. The principle that stopped you, the one that described where you've been stuck, the one that felt like it was written specifically about you. Take that principle, do one thing about it. Today, not when things slow down, not when you feel more ready. Today, because the door is right in front of you, and now you have the key.